Hare Krishna. Good to see you all. Tonight we'll continue with our study of Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Tonight we are going deeper into chapter 4, and tonight we will study from verses 24 to 33. So, as we've mentioned in previous classes, this chapter is called Jnana Yoga, which means transcendental knowledge. Knowledge of how to act on the spiritual platform. Krishna states within the Bhagavad Gita that this knowledge of how to act on the spiritual platform is the best of all knowledge. There is no better knowledge than how to act on the spiritual platform, to understand the difference between matter and spirit. So this is what Krishna is focusing on. And he's teaching Arjuna and all of us how to act in this world with knowledge so that our activities become fully spiritualized. So we'll continue tonight. We'll begin with verse number 24. And if you have any questions or any comments as we go, please ask. Text number 24. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So this is a reassuring verse from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna states this many times in the Bhagavad Gita, in different sections, in different chapters. Krishna says that we will attain the spiritual kingdom if we fully absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness and fully absorb ourselves in spiritual activities, bhakti yoga, or devotional service. He describes that in this verse, Krishna says that when you perform bhakti yoga or devotional service, devotional activities which are offered to Krishna, even in this world, they become spiritualized. They are not ordinary activities, right? They are spiritual activities. Right? And they purify us. They lead us to the eternal kingdom of God. So Prabhupada says in the purport that a conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out. The process of getting out is Krishna consciousness, as set forth in the Gita. This process is sacrifice for the satisfaction of Krishna. So all of us in this material world, we've been here for so long. It's described that we are Nityabhada living entities. Nityabhada means eternally conditioned. Or as Prabhupada explains, we have been in this material world since time immemorial. We've been here for so long now, you can hardly even trace out when we were not here in this material world. We've always practically been in the material world for so long. It's almost an eternity that we've been here. It's such a long time that we came into this material world. So we've been here for so long, it's considered to be like an eternity. And therefore we are called Nityabada, living entities. Now, although we're in this material world and now we identify with it, and we have practically unlimited material desires because of our identification with this material energy. We have so many material desires. Although we have all these material desires and we identify with this material world, we need to get out of this material world. Because this material world is causing us suffering. And because it's causing us suffering, that gives us an impetus to get out, to leave this material world. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that the process of getting out is Krishna consciousness, right? It is devotional service, which fixes the mind on Krishna. As Prabhupada says, as set forth in the Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a manual on how to act on the spiritual platform and fully satisfy Krishna. So this process, Prabhupada says, is sacrifice for the satisfaction of Krishna. Jagya, the word jagya means sacrifice. We must sacrifice to please Krishna. Right? That is jagya. Right? We have to sacrifice to please him. In this world, we have so many material desires, but you advance in Krishna consciousness when you sacrifice your desires for the pleasure of Krishna. Prabhupada further says in the purport that everything that exists is situated in Brahma Jyoti. But when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering, the consumer, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. So one devotee was asking me this the other day. How can we understand that we understand that matter can be transformed into spirit? How does matter get transformed into spirit? Right? Matter, when we engage this material energy in Krishna's service, the material energy becomes transformed into spiritual energy. It's actually spiritualized. Prabhupada gives this simple, the nice example. You take an iron rod, you put it into the fire. When you take the iron rod out of the fire and you touch it to something, it burns. So it acts like fire. It's been transformed. So this material energy, when we use it in the service of Krishna, it becomes transformed. Right? And then it's no longer considered material. It is spiritualized. It is spiritual energy. The devotee was asking me how, because Prabhupada states that matter can be transformed into spirit, but how does spirit get transformed into matter? So factually speaking, matter is what we are surrounded by in this material world. So it is a transformation of spirit. It is Krishna's energy, which is called Brahma Jyoti, Brahman, Krishna's effulgence. His energy, his Shakti, emanates from him. And then a portion of that energy becomes transformed by contact with, Krishna transforms it into what we call material energy, apara prakriti. So Krishna transforms it and it becomes materialized. So this is the position of this material energy, right? It's a transformation of spirit. And when you use that material energy in the service of Krishna, then it is once again considered to be spiritualized. It becomes spiritualized. When you use that material energy, you use it in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritualized. When the spiritual energy is transformed by Krishna, it becomes material energy, but then it can change back into spiritual energy once again. So, so Prabhupada says in the purport that the offering, the consumer, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. So, when we offer things to Krishna, which is called Yukta Vairagya, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchate. Some things cannot be offered to Krishna. Like you can't offer meat to Krishna. So, flesh cannot be in that example cannot be used in Krishna's service. However, most things can be used in Krishna's service. That's called Yukta Vairagya. Right? It means the material energy being used in Krishna's service to purify. That's called Yukta Vairagya. Okay. Text number 25. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. And some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. As Prabhupada says in the purport, the Krishna conscious person sacrifices everything for the satisfaction of Krishna. And thus, all his material possessions, as well as his own self, everything, is sacrificed for Krishna. Thus, he is the first-class yogi, but he does not lose his individual existence. So this is the point. Krishna is speaking about how performing yajna or sacrificing something in the service of Krishna purifies our consciousness. It's called Yukta Vairagya. Some get, as it mentions here, some people worship demigods. So people can worship demigods. I'll read Burujam Prabhu's comment in Surrender Unto Me. Krishna will later explain that only those who are less intelligent worship the demigods, as if they were supreme or independently able to supply life's necessities. So, some people worship the demigods. They like to worship the devatas. But a devotee understands that they cannot, when you worship a demigod, if you worship it separate from the demigod separately from Krishna, the demigod cannot independently reward you your desires. Their power, their potency comes from Krishna. So for a devotee, we go straight to Krishna. We worship Krishna himself as opposed to demigods. We only worship demigods, offer them respect in relation to Krishna. That's all. So, Also talks about worshipping Krishna, mentions in the verse. Some yogis, they offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. So some yogis, that their goal is to realize Brahman. They're impersonalists. Even that is, if they are to attain perfection in their realization of the Brahmajyoti, the Brahman spirit, that ultimately is rewarded by Krishna also. So for a devotee, we only worship Krishna. Akama sava kama va moksha kama udaradi. We mentioned this verse, I think, last week. Right? A devotee always worships Krishna. That's his meditation, because he sees only Krishna can reward you your desires, whatever it is you aspire for. Go to Krishna, because only he ultimately can reward these things. Prabhupada then says different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifice. Sacrifice means to satisfy Vishnu, Jagya. All the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within two primary divisions: sacrifice of worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. So, if you want to attain perfection in anything you do, it requires sacrifice, even materially. Like if an athlete wants to become a great athlete, they have to make sacrifices. So in the same way, if we want to get close to Krishna, we have to sacrifice certain things in this world, our material desires, maybe our material possessions, material activities. So we have to engage ourselves in such a way that we can ultimately reach Krishna and satisfy Krishna. That is the process of Bhakti Yoga. Okay, text number 26. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, the members of the four divisions of human life are all meant to become perfect yogis or transcendentalists. Since human life is not meant for enjoying sense gratification, like animals, the four orders are so arranged that one may become perfect in spiritual life. So this is called Varna. Krishna is speaking about the Varna ashram system. So here he's speaking about the ashrams. The brahmachari, which is the first of the ashrams, how does he become perfect? It says here, Krishna mentions, by hearing, engaging the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. So he practices celibacy. That's what brahmacharya is for, to practice celibacy, to restrict oneself from associating with the opposite sex, so that one can be more spiritually focused, and to sacrifice the hearing process. The brahmachari becomes perfect in spiritual life by vidya. Vidya means knowledge. Right? by knowledge, by cultivating knowledge, by studying the Shastra, the scriptures, the brahmachari becomes purified. He has more time to dedicate to that because he is not engaged with dealings with the opposite sex, which take up a lot of time. You know, when you have a wife, a husband, a partner, it takes up a lot of your time. And then you have a family, a pacham, and children, right? Then it takes a lot of time. So the brahmachari minimizes those material things, so he'll have more time to serve Krishna. So Prabhupada says in the purport that the brahmacharis, under the care of a guru, control the mind by abstaining from sense gratification. A brahmachari hears only words concerning Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle for understanding, and therefore the pure brahmachari engages fully in Harinam Anukirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. He restrains himself from material sounds and he hears Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's how a brahmachari becomes perfect. Then Prabhupada explains about the householders, the grihastas. All of us fall into that category. We're householders or grihastas. Prabhupada says, the householders who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. This restricted, unattached sex life is also a kind of yajna because the restricted householder sacrifices his general tendency towards sense gratification for higher transcendental life. So Krishna says later in the Bhagavad Gita, I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. Right? Krishna says, I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. That is the duty of the householder. The householder becomes purified by only using sex to create children, right? To create progeny. That is how he becomes purified. So how else does the grihasta become especially purified? By deity worship, worshipping the deity, the Archa Vigraha. Because the grihasta is attached to material form. He's attached to his partner, his wife, his husband, like that. The wife, the husband, we're attached. So by worshipping the deity, one loses one's attachment to material form and becomes attached to spiritual form, the form of the Lord in the form of the deity. So he regulates himself in that way. So these are the ways that the grihasta becomes, the householder becomes purified, right? By only having sex life to procreate children, to worship the deity in a regulated manner, and by giving charity, dana. This is especially how the grihasta becomes purified. The householder works, makes money, and then gives some portion of the money to the Krishna consciousness movement, and in that way purifies one's material desires and material attachments. That's the process of Krishna consciousness. Text number 27. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. So Prabhupada says in the purport, the yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred to herein. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called parag atma. But as soon as the soul becomes detached from sense enjoyment, it is called pratyag atma. According to this yoga system, pratyag atma is the ultimate goal. This pratyag atma is withdrawn from activities in matter. So what's being spoken of here is the path of the yogis who follow Patanjali's system of Ashtanga yoga. In the modern day, when we speak about yoga, we only refer to a certain part of this system of purification. The yoga system of Patanjali is called Ashtanga, which means there's 8 parts. First of all, we have yama niyama. Yama niyama means to accept certain things which will help you to progress spiritually, and to reject certain things which will impede you from progressing in your spiritual life. That's called yama and niyama, right? Both of them. So if we're going to follow this system of yoga, we have to follow all the yangas, not just the next part. And then after yama and niyama, you accept and reject certain things. Then there is what we call asana. Asana means to practice the postures, right? Certain postures. The reason that we practice the postures, what we in the modern day we call this yoga. You know, you go to a yoga class, like you go past. Today I went past yoga schools. You know, you see in Geelong, oh, there's this yoga school, that yoga school, where people practice yoga. This yoga is simply, it's simply asana, which is one part of the yoga system, the 8 system. The reason we do the asana or the yoga postures is to keep our body healthy, so then we can control the mind and fix the mind on something higher. After asana, we have pranayama. Pranayama means you control your breathing, because when you regulate the breathing, then you can also fix the mind, and you can prolong your life and live in a very healthy way. So after that, after yama niyama, asana, pranayama, then we have pratyahara. Pratyahara means I withdraw my senses from the objects of the senses, which is part of the yoga practice. And then we have dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, which are 3 levels of deep meditation in the yoga process. Samadhi is the final step where we fully fix our mind on Krishna without deviation. So as devotees, we don't practice the Ashtanga yoga process. We practice the Bhakti yoga process. which leads to exactly the same destination, but it's much easier. Instead of having to meditate and do all this austerity and sense of mind control, you just serve Krishna, and then your mind automatically thinks of Krishna. So that's how we practice. That's what Krishna ultimately recommends in the Bhagavad Gita. Text number 28. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, all these yogis are faithfully engaged in different types of sacrifice for a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness is different from these because it is the direct service of Krishna. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any of the above-mentioned types of sacrifice, but can be attained only by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotees. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. So as Prabhupada points out, that the path of Bhakti Yoga, which is ultimately what Krishna is recommending in the Bhagavad Gita, it is the direct service of the Lord. It is different from these other processes. And by doing it, by performing Bhakti Yoga, you will get what everyone else receives. Right? What everyone else is working hard to experience, you will automatically get. The goal of all the other yoga processes is automatically achieved by a bhakti yogi, a devotee of Krishna, a Vaishnava. So that's why we don't concentrate on these other systems which Krishna is mentioning in the Bhagavad Gita. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's final instruction is Savadamam Parijaja. Reject all of these other processes. Mam ekam sharanam vraja, and surrender unto me alone. As it says here, the process of accepting strict vows. We also accept vows, right? As devotees, we accept vows. But when you perform devotional service, they don't feel difficult. When you're fully engaged in service to Krishna, it doesn't feel difficult. The vows feel easy. Some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, right? Like a sannyasi or a brahmachari, they don't have material possessions. They focus themselves on serving Krishna. And then others by performing severe austerities. Prabhupada said the austerity that we perform, right, as devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement, the Hare Krishna movement, is giving Krishna consciousness to others or preaching. Prabhupada said this is our tapasya or austerity in this age of Kali. We don't have to do all these other activities. We simply serve Krishna. Right? We simply engage in serving Krishna. Right? You don't have to do all these other austerities. You just assist in spreading the Hare Krishna movement to others, giving it to others, preaching, And in this way, you do that is the greatest austerity or the greatest sacrifice. You don't have to worry about doing other things. And then Prabhupada says, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, which is the Ashtanga process we just explained, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. You don't have to study all the different Vedic literatures. You just study the essence of the Vedas, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Even the Bhagavatam is enough for people in Kali Yuga. I mean, there's 18,000 verses there. Even some devotees struggle just studying Bhagavatam. You don't have to worry about everything else. Right? Just study Bhagavatam, you'll become perfect. Text number 29. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. So, a Krishna conscious person, Prabhupada says in the purport, being always situated in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, automatically becomes the controller of the senses. At the end of life, he is naturally transferred to the transcendental plane of Lord Krishna. So we don't have to perfect these breathing exercises, which is part of the yoga system, pranayama. You know, it's not our process. We just engage in Krishna's service. Prabhupada then says in the purport that the intelligent yogi is interested in attaining perfection in one life without waiting for the next. The practice of reduced eating is automatically done when one eats only Krishna prasadam. Reducing eating is very helpful in the matter of sense control. And without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of the material entanglement. So if you eat in a regulated way, you only eat prasadam and you eat simply, it'll be much easier to control your mind and senses and to advance in Krishna consciousness. Text number 30. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme, eternal atmosphere. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that from the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifice, karma and jnana yoga, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the senses. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, bliss, and life. So the emphasis here in Prabhupada's purport and in the verse, it is describing sense control. Vacho vegan, manasa krodha vegan, jiva vegan. Udaro pasta vegan. Etan vegan vishaheta dira. Savam apimam putivim shishat. One has to control these urges. Right? If you can control these urges, you become a Goswami. And when you become a Goswami, a master of the senses, the mind and the senses, then you can advance quickly and rapidly in Krishna consciousness. So we need to learn to control the mind and the senses. Because if we don't, we stay attached to this material world. Then Prabhupada says, all the above mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but at the end, he enters the kingdom of God. So we can live happily in this world if we follow the regulative principles of freedom that Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, that we are asked to follow in the Hare Krishna movement. If we follow all these things, we will become self-realized. We'll become Goswamis, we'll become master of the senses. Text number 31. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. Then what of the next? And then Prabhupada says in the purport, ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sin is the cause of material existence. The human form is the only loophole by which one may get out. The Vedas give us a chance for escape by the paths of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. So, ignorance, it's in Sanskrit we say avidya. Avidya means ignorance. When we're ignorant, we have material desires. We identify with the material body. And we have so many material desires which come from this material mind and body. And then we act on them, and then we cause our negative karma, and then we become implicated or bound in this material world. So we have to cut the ignorance of this material world. How do we cut the ignorance of this material world? By transcendental knowledge of Krishna. Then Prabhupada says, all the above mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but at the end, he enters the kingdom of God. So text number 32. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. So Prabhupada explains in the purport. Different types of sacrifice are mentioned in the Vedas to suit the different types of worker, because men are so deeply absorbed in the bodily concept. These sacrifices are arranged so that one can work either with this body, mind, or intelligence. But all of them are ultimately for liberation. So, Krishna is mentioned in this section of the Bhagavad Gita that there are different types of sacrifices. So why are we giving different types of sacrifices? Because everyone's different. Everyone has different conditioning. So for one person, they'll become purified in this way. Another person, they'll become purified in that way. But ultimately, doesn't matter what our different natures are, we have to use our nature in the service of Krishna, and then we'll become fully purified and satisfied. And then the last verse for tonight, text number 33. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. And then Prabhupada explains, the purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to Krishna. So why do we perform different sacrifices? To get knowledge, transcendental knowledge, to act on the spiritual platform so we can fully dedicate ourselves to the loving transcendental service of Krishna. So we need to purify ourselves, and then we'll get to the platform where we can serve Krishna purely. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities and bestow no spiritual benefit. So that is the potency of studying Bhagavad Gita. Why do we study the Bhagavad Gita? So that by study of the Bhagavad Gita, we can learn to make all of our activities in this world spiritual and to connect them to Krishna so that we, at the end of this life, we can enter into the kingdom of God, which is the goal. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions or any comments about anything that we discussed tonight? Okay, thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Babu. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah.